Welcome everyone, I'm Jeff Smith, and today I want to talk to you about building a web service for doing file up and downloads from your Oracle database. You can find more about me at that Jeff Smith online. My email is jeff.d.smith@oracle.com, and to learn more about ORDS, simply go to oracle.com/rest. ORDS is the mid-tier Java technology that allows us to run web services with the Oracle database. Its full name is actually Oracle REST Data Services. I can't give you a full sermon on what REST is, but it's a way of, it's an architectural style where we have resources and then we perform actions on those resources. When I see database people jump into building services and they call them REST, where they get confused sometimes is they'll start building URLs and hooking it up to HTTPS and they think they're done. But when you look at their patterns are like delete imp or add imp. And really you want your pattern to always be the resource itself. So employees. And then when you want to add an item to that collection, you would have a verb that you performed against employees like post or put. You would never see something like get on a pattern like delete imp. That would confuse the consumer of the API. They're doing a get, so they expect that they're just getting a list of something. They don't expect changes in the database. If you had something called employees/deleted and you did a get on that, that might return a list of employees that have been fired or let go. That's about the closest I can think of a reasonable way to have the words delete in a pattern, and even that seems kind of harsh. So how do we bring this architectural style to the database itself? So that's delivered via ORDS. And ORDS is running again in your mid-tier. Most often you'll find it behind Apache and Tomcat. And when someone makes a request and it gets routed into ORDS, ORDS is able to deconstruct the URI, the /x/y, and identify the database that resource lies in. And we have a connection pool to that database. So we borrow one of those connections. We figure out the user that the transaction is going to run as, and we proxy connect into that user. And then we find the code that represents what the user is asking for, which is going to generally be SQL. And we run that SQL. And instead of bringing the results back as you're used to seeing in a consumer or in a database application like SQL Developer, we instead format that to JSON. And we page the results automatically for you, and we bring that back down to your client. Then we give the connection back to the connection pool. So we handle the security, we handle the paging, and we handle the JSON formatting. And what I'm about to show you today is where you're writing all of the code for you, but we also have automatic REST features where you can just REST enable a table or a stored procedure, and we handle all of the coding for you as well. ORDS is typically installed with Tomcat. I'm running it as a standalone process, and when you do that, you get a Apache Project Jetty web server to handle the web requests. I tell people that ORDS is easy, but the nice thing is customers come back and tell us it's easy too. So we frequently see folks going and watching a video or reading the docs, they download ORDS and they have a working POC in a matter of hours or just a day or two. If you need help, that's what we're here for. We're pretty easy to find. You found this video, so you know how to find me at least. If you have questions, feel free to post them as comments to this video. Now let's get into today's mission. So we have a table in the database. It's called media. It has a column of type blob. I want to put a file into that, and I want to be able to get it back out. That's basically what I'm saying. And I want to be able to do all of that via HTTP. So we're going to be doing that via gets and posts. And before we write any code, we need to agree on how we're going to model this resource. So these are my resource templates. So these are my patterns I'm going to have. Media slash is going to represent the contents of that table. And when I do a get on that, I expect to get a list of files back with some links. When I do a post to that, I expect that I'm adding a new item to that collection. Then I want to be able to deal with the records themselves. So I'm going to have a pattern media slash :ID, which will represent the primary key value of a specific record. So when I go and get media slash 5, I'm going to get the metadata on record 5. Now, what I'm not going to bring back is a text representation of that blob, because that's not going to be useful to anyone, or at least it's not going to be very useful, and it's going to take a long time to run. What I'm instead going to do is include in that metadata that's returned a link to actually go get the blob itself. And that's represented by media slash :ID slash content. And when I do a get on that, it's going to return the blob and also the MIME type. So the client knows how to represent and handle the content that's being sent back down from ORDS. All right, so we have our 3 patterns, and you can see we have 4 handlers. Each handler gets its own PL SQL block or SQL statement, and that's what I'm going to walk you through next. And we're going to be doing this with SQL Developer, or at least I'm going to be doing it with SQL Developer. As far as I know, it's the only desktop tool on the market today that gives you an IDE workflow for dealing with your RESTful web services. If you're an Application Express or Apex user, there's also a nice web interface over there for defining your REST services. But you don't have to have Apex to use ORDS. So they're not directly tied together, but if you have both, then they play quite nice together. We also give you a PL SQL API. So you can do all of this via normal batch scripting. So you can have a set of SQL scripts that you run via SQL CL or maybe SQL Plus that you can use to deploy these web services. I'm in SQL Developer. I'm connected to a REST-enabled schema. And when I do that, I get on my connection tree this REST services item. And the module that I've built for this demo is called OR Magazine, because I'm actually writing an article that shows how to do all this too. And here are those same patterns and handlers. So let's actually go and look at the handler in the code to do the very most basic request. So I don't have a select star from because I don't want to actually bring back the blob. And I also want to have some links brought back. So the first part of this is pretty straightforward. I have the actual column list, the ID, the file name, and the content type. The trick that I'm introducing here is for the link. So I've got a string, a / appended by the ID value, and I'm using a column alias, so that's the quoted text there, $record. When ORDS encounters that $, that tells the ORDS code that when it does the JSON formatting, insert that as a link. So I'm already on the web server address /ords /hr / the module name /media /. So when we do the JSON formatting and I do ./, that tells it to stay where we're at and then just add the record ID. So it's going to return back what we came with a /5, for example. And instead of printing that as regular text, it's going to add it as a link. And that's it. I did add an order by here because I wanted to automatically order by the insertion order. So when I make this call, when I do a get on /media /, we have my results here. So here are the columns that I asked for, and actually it might have a collection of items here, and each item represents a row in the table. And then here's that link. So it's called record, and that's not arbitrary. It's $record. So that dollar record not only tells it to make it a link, it calls that link record. And then here is the URL that it's spitting out. So I could try to click on that and go get that item, but if you haven't built the handler on that resource, ORDS is going to give you 404. It's like, yeah, you gave me a nice link, but I don't know what to do with it. So before we do that, let's finish off the /media/resource. So we had two handlers, a get and a post. We looked at the get, now we're looking at the post. So you might think of this as the hard work, but when you look at the code, it's just a basic insert statement. Post handlers are dealt with PL SQL blocks, and inside this PL SQL block, I've got a simple insert. Some of the magic starts to happen when we look at these bind variables. So I've got bind file name, bind file type, and bind body. And those are being fed to the insert statement. You'll notice I don't have an ID listed in the insert, and that's because my table has an identity column, and so it's being automatically generated for me. So I don't have to worry about the ID. What I have done is I'm saying, look, capture the ID and return it into this image ID address, which I have declared up here in my anonymous block. So I can return that here. All right, but let's talk about these bind variables. How do those work? So some of this comes for free, some of it doesn't. I'll talk about body in a second, but let's talk about file name and file type first. File name and file type are going to be declared by us. So ORDS isn't going to know about this stuff until we tell it. So I'm telling it to expect these items to come off the HTTP header on the request itself. And I'm going to say, okay, when you see these things, make them available in the PL SQL block as these bind variables. Now I have them matching each other by name. You don't have to do that. I control both sides of this request, so I'm making the request and I'm coding the code behind the request. You might not have that luxury. You might have an existing REST pattern and code base where they're expecting to be able to put on the header things called ABC and XYZ. And if they've done that, you'll just declare these parameter names as ABC and XYZ. Now it's up to you how you want those things to be exposed in the PL SQL block. I'm keeping the names the same. So when I say :file name in the SQL code, it's saying, oh, okay, go get that value off the HTTP header, and you know it as file name. So when you understand that, I think it's pretty simple to understand. So name versus bind parameter. Bind parameter is how it's represented in the database code, and name is how it's represented in either the request or the response. All right, now body. What is body? Because we don't see body listed down here at all. Body is something you get free out of the box with ORDS, and it represents the body of the post request itself. So when I'm doing file upload in post, when I attach a file to it and I refer to body in the PL SQL or SQL block, that tells ORDS, hey, go get that data and put it into a blob. So we automatically give you the post body addressable as a blob variable, in this case, bind body. And it's very convenient because I actually have a blob in the table and I'm trying to insert that. New for 18.3, if instead you want to handle the body of that post as a CLOB or a CLOB or a character lob, you can now also use body_text, and that will handle it as a CLOB. So you might find that useful. All right, so we've got 3 of the binds explained, but we have 2 more left. You can also see in here I have something called status and location. And status and location are all about not the request, but about the response. So as I'm doing this work, I'm saying, hey, everything looks good. I want the response status code to be a 201 because that's going to represent a new item being added to the collection. And I also want to pass back a link or the location of this new item that we added. That's why I'm capturing image ID up here from the insert, so I can add it to this thing called location. And if we look at how these two things are defined, location is out on the header and it's a string. That's pretty straightforward. Status is the same, but you'll see I've given it a special name. So ORDS status code tells ORDS when it's doing the response, if it sees that, to set the status code of the request to that value. And it's very particular. It has to match that exactly. It has to be out HTTP header, and you need to set it to an integer. In previous versions of ORDS, you would use Apex status code, but with version 18.3, we've deprecated that, and so you need to start moving that over to ORDS status code. Let's see how this works. So let's pick a file to add. Let's pick a pretty picture. A bug. Who doesn't like the bug? It's expecting data on my header, right? So I've got to give it the file name. And the file type is the same. So I can just post this now. So I got my 201 back like I was expecting. So if you don't set status, the normal response is going to be 200. I want 201, so I set it to 201. And here's that location string I passed back. So I can see that it created record 41. So if we go back to SQL Dev and we look at the media table, I don't see 41 here because I pulled this up earlier. If I refresh this, I should see a 41. Look, there's 41. And in SQL Dev, we make it pretty easy to render these blobs. You just double click, say view as image. There's my bug. So it looks like this worked. Yay. All right. So let's move on to the next pattern, media/ID. Again, pretty simple. So I don't have a select star from because I don't want that blob data spilling out into the JSON document that comes back. Instead, I've got file name, content type, and then you can see I'm using the dollar trick again. So I'm bringing back the ID and I'm concatenating that with the /content, and I'm calling that file. So that gets me a link to the blob itself, which we're going to show next. So we understand the dollar trick. The only other trick here is this. So you're thinking, oh, there's a bind. We have to go declare that in the parameter section. Good news, no, you don't. So when you have in your pattern that :ID, ORDS is smart enough to automatically bind that. So when I have media/5, and that is actually coded as /ID, I can get that value of 5 by just referring to it over here as :ID. These are case sensitive. So if I had :uppercase ID and over here I had lowercase ID, I'm going to get like a 400, like it doesn't know what I'm talking about. I can't find what it's looking for. So make sure those cases match. Let's go look at this one. Here I'm asking for record 21. And here's the JSON response. So the file name, the content type, here's that link. You'll notice it's called file because it's $file. And I could theoretically go click on that and get the contents of that file. But we haven't built the handler for that yet. So ORDS doesn't know the pattern and it doesn't have any code to run. So you get a 404 not found. This one looks the simplest of all. It doesn't look like there are any tricks here. And really there's not. So all you need to do is select the blob itself, which is content. And for ORDS to do its magic, you want to have the first thing that comes back as not the blob, but the actual MIME type. So you could hard code these. Let's say I'm going to have in my table only videos. And so I could hard code the MIME type. I could say select video / MP4, whatever the MIME type is for that. I don't have those memorized. And then followed by the blob column, and ORDS would be good. It would know how to handle that. I have a very open-ended media cabinet here. I can put any file in that I want. So when I built my table, I cheated kind of. I wouldn't say it's cheating, but I had the content type stored along with the files. So it's very easy for me to say, hey, go give me that file, and this is the content type. I've built it into the table. And you can see I'm pulling it by the ID, because again, we don't want to bring back all the files, we want to bring back just the specific file. One other thing. If you would do this as is, by default, you're going to get the JSON formatting, and we don't want that. So when we look at the properties of the handler, the source type has been set to media resource, and that says just bring it back raw. Don't do any of the formatting. So if it brings back a PDF with the correct MIME type, your client, your browser should know to go open up Adobe or whatever your PDF application is. So the default here is a collection query. You need to set it to media resource. And let's go see this in action. Let's get number 3. So there's file 3. There's file 4, which is an animated GIF. And here's the one that we just added in this video, the bug. So at this point, you probably think we're done, right? Because we've accomplished what we set out for. But I want to be nice and give you guys a doc where you can see the API and play with it. Before I get to that, if you see the link at the end of this video and if you're seeing this video on my blog, you're going to see these automatically. I'm going to give you the code that you need to build the table and to build the REST service module. So what you need to have on your side is a database. You need to have ORDS, and you're going to need the files that you want to put into the table. So we already have videos, we already have blogs, we already have examples of how to get ORDS set up and running. I didn't want to make this a 2-hour video. If you want to cheat, you can go get the Developer Days VirtualBox image off of OTN, and it's got database and ORDS running in it. If you're a container guy or gal, we have Docker templates for the database and ORDS, so pretty easy to get up and running that way. Just Google Docker ORDS or Docker database. Let's go look at the API stuff. So for every module that you build, and mine's called OR Magazine, we give you this resource pattern. So open API catalog / OR Magazine. That's going to give you the Open API 2.0 Swagger JSON. So let's look at that. So when I make this call, what comes back is a JSON response that I can use to go build Swagger doc. And if I were to go paste this into a Swagger editor, here we go, and I can start playing with this. There's my data. All right, so we got to the end. Congrats if you made it this far. You know where to find the videos. You know where to find the blogs. We have GitHub examples, and I've written some magazine articles if you just want to hold some paper in your hand and get through this, like why would REST matter to a database professional? And I also have examples in Oracle Magazine already on how to use the automatic REST feature and how to use our REST-enabled SQL endpoint for ad hoc SQL and PL SQL via REST and ORDS. Thanks everyone for your time. And if you have questions, again, leave them as comments here on the video or on my blog. Thanks and have a good day.